Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system.
Matt Horn
is not available. At the tone, please record your message. When you have finished recording, you may hang up or press 1 for more options.
Superman.
Miss Lane.
Recently, you've come under a lot of fire for what some might.
It's a lot of fire.
It's a lot. Today, the Secretary of Defense said he was going to look into your actions. That's funny?
My actions? I stopped a war.
Maybe.
Not maybe. I did.
In effect, you illegally entered a country.
This is how you're gonna be?
I'm not the one being interviewed, Superman. Did you consult with the president?
No.
You seemingly acting as a representative of the United States.
I wasn't representing anybody except for me.
Around the world.
And doing good.
I would question myself in the same situation and consider the consequences.
People were going to die.
Hey Matt, this is Natasha Halevi. I was just calling you because I have been trying to get in touch with you to watch Superman. I was thinking maybe we could go together or something. I've already seen it, and I really think you should see it because I'm not sure if you've seen it because I haven't heard you say anything about it, specifically what goes on at Luthor Corp. So, I don't know, if you could just call me back already, I would really, really appreciate it. There's a show tonight at 7:15, there's another one at 10:55, and there's a show at 11:70. Yeah, weird time, I know. You'll be there, right? Okay. Bye, call me.
On the line, we have Natasha Halevi talking to us from... Where are you talking to us from, Natasha?
I'm talking from Los Angeles, California.
I am a big fan of the Los Angeles people. I always have been. Even more so recently. We've touched on this. Obviously, the state of Los Angeles following what happened at the start of the year, which was the Los Angeles fires.
Yes. Yeah. Los Angeles, I would say already has... just immediately there was such a strong community, and already there's such a bounce back in everybody's just liveliness and the way we talk about things. You talk to so many people and they're in a rental or some people are still staying in hotels. People don't know exactly what's going to happen, but they're full of life and they're vibrant. There is something about rising up through the ashes that's really, really happening in Los Angeles right now. The strength is just incredible. It's incredible to see here.
I think the resilience of the Los Angeles people is because they had COVID. They had the whole COVID pandemic they had to go through. And so this being another kind of natural disaster, it was obvious what was needed to be done.
Yeah, the obvious what's needed to be done is so clear. Nobody stood around saying, what do we do next? Everybody went into action while it was happening. People were, calling friends, opening up houses, pulling out their mattresses and inviting over as many people as possible. I had a family member whose friend had a snake, and the snake was over, and some other family members came over, and the chinchillas came over. Animals and everything, and that happened immediately. And now still that same attitude has continued over these many months in terms of people finding a way to thrive again.
The other piece of industry news we have to obviously mention is last week. We lost Ozzy Osbourne, which was a massive devastation, I think, for the heavy metal community.
Yeah,
and
totally.
For the wrestling side of things, we also lost Hulk Hogan. What were your thoughts on both?
It's interesting. Both those people are such sort of iconic, loud, wild men, and they represent such an era of time and such a fearlessness, and for those two people to be mainstream in the way they were mainstream, but be so unusual as human beings and so creative in their specific art. And yes, I am absolutely calling out Hulk Hogan as an artist. It is a fearlessness, and it's I think a reminder to everyone, to embody some of that fearlessness. And it's always so sad to lose, icons, because they have such meaning to so many people, and it's so collective.
Well, I know one person who's fearless. Superman.
Oh my, that guy.
Yeah, him.
From my point of view, he's a big pain in my butt because I work for Lex Luthor.
Well, we'll get on to that. So obviously the reason why we've got you here is to talk about Superman. Now, I am not going to go on for ages about how much of a success this film has been, because let's be honest, we all know it was going to be a success from the get-go, and it's done its box office figures. I think we can safely say, Natasha, it's still going up now.
Yes.
What can I say? It was fantastic.
Yeah, it's such a beautiful piece of film. I feel like everybody that's seen it really understands like how unique it is in the goodness and the kindness that the film carries, and just the idea that like kindness is punk rock, and that's like such a cool concept that's so simple and it's so powerful to think about that, and then to take that into your life and implement it, and to watch it on the screen and then to feel it and then to want to be it is such a powerful thing. But I also think the film is just like made in such a cool, unique way. I think James has like repeatedly in his filmmaking history pushed not just his limits, but pushed sort of the limits of like where the film industry is in a moment. And I think when I watched the film the first time, I was so mind blown by how it's such a different way of storytelling. I feel like it's the first movie that I've seen that's actually a comic book movie. Like, I've seen superhero movies before, but I don't think I've ever seen a movie that's a comic book movie and feels something similar to actually reading a comic book. And it is so unique because it sort of defies the narrative structure that we think films have to be in. And still, everyone who watches it is so satisfied, and we don't feel like we're lacking in anything because we're seeing a narrative a different way than we've seen it before. We feel like we're like experiencing it in a whole new way, and that is just like, that's magic, that's art, that's talent, and that's something really special that James did with this film that's like nothing I've ever seen before.
I've got to do it now, get it out of the way. The one character in the whole film that we really, really need to mention
dun, dun, dun.
is a dog.
Yeah, let's talk about him.
Yeah, what an absolutely great creative choice James did there. And I was thinking this can go one of two ways. It's either going to be comic relief, or it's going to be harking back to sort of Smallville, that kind of thing, and like having a dog. But it plays it so well, I think, and the fact that the dog beats him up.
Oh my gosh, it's
incredible.
So funny. I'm sure by now everybody has seen at least one interview or one Instagram post or something about James's dog Ozu. They're one and the same. If Ozu had superpowers, he would totally be that dog, and it is so funny to see that on screen. And it was really cool. It's so cool to have like a dog that has superpowers that acts like a dog would act, who didn't have maybe the best training.
I think the robot scene where it says we tried to stop him, but it just didn't work.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It makes me think of so many times in my life where I've had a dog, whatever, do anything like jump up on the table and take like my friend's sunglasses. I have a friend who has a dog who waits till everyone's had a little bit too much to drink and then goes and steals the charcuterie, And it's like, of course, that's how a dog would be if he had superpowers.
I've got to ask the question. Now, people say that this podcast is scripted.
No.
They say this podcast is scripted. Stop emailing me about this, but do email me about other things, that's fine. There's going to be a sequel, we know there is. My question is this. Clark Kent has a dog called Crypto. Would Lex Luthor have a cat?
Oh my gosh, where is the cat?
Yes.
Where is the cat? It's so funny. I have all these videos I make of one of my cats that likes to lay out like Superman, I'm sure a lot of cats do this, but lays on his tummy and puts his paws out and falls asleep that way. And I just have so many videos set to different Superman like themes of my cat flying around like Superman. I think maybe my cat should audition.
I am going to play this carefully because the next question is one that you're all going to go, okay, yeah. How did you get involved in the film in the first place?
So James is my brother-in-law. It's always like so fun to go to his sets. I've actually like snuck into the background of like more than one of his films, mostly because I spend time on James's sets watching the way he works, watching the way the team works. I shadowed for quite a while when he was filming The Suicide Squad, which was incredible because that cast was incredible. And for me, I'm shadowing as a director because I also direct films. So it kind of only made sense over time that I would show up in one of his films with an actual character name, just because I hang out so much. You hang out on set long enough, you got to do something with me. Bonnie DeSepolo and also Adriana Leonard and I all kind of came out together. We're all friends and knew that we were going to just sort of be around on set. We didn't know exactly what we were going to be doing or where we would be. We just knew we were going to be spending 2 weeks helping out as some characters on set, and we'd done some fittings, but we didn't have a lot of information. You know, a lot of information about the film was really quiet for obvious reasons. No leaks. Also, among that group, Stevie Blackheart is a good friend of ours who does an amazing job as part of that team. And so it was kind of like a fun group of people who are all filmmakers. Bonnie is also a director. Adriana's a producer. So it was kind of just like a fun place for us to go play and be sort of like extra attentive to what needed to be done because we're very interested in the filmmaking process. So that's how we ended up there. And the amount we got to actually play as the characters that we were brought in to play was so much fun. We were there for 2 weeks. Working with Nicholas Hoult is awesome. Working with that entire team is incredible. James, obviously, you might guess, is really so good at what he does, and it is so fun to be on a set that he is running. There is so much kindness and so much joy and so much laughter and so much fun, and being in this space that was designed by Beth Mickles, who's incredible, with such detail. You know, the screens are doing things, the notepads have information on them, the pencils and the notepads and the cups that all have our like logo on them. I mean, the whole world was just like such a fun world to be a part of. So we just got to play, you know, and that was so lucky.
I should also mention that your other half's in the film as well.
Oh my gosh, yes, my other half is in the film. Not only is my other half in the film, he has a really cool cameo. His character is so great. Maxwell Lord, Sean Gunn playing Maxwell Lord. I love him as this character. I've seen some other stuff as his character. You know, if you've seen the Peacemaker trailer, you'll see his character show up again, and it's so great. And while I was on set working, when you see his cameo, we saw it in real life on that set. It's not just like CGI'd in later. So I actually, while we were playing as these characters, my character is not really a huge fan of his. And it was really fun to actually sort of play with that, even though he wasn't there on set, but to play with that in that moment, being able to see him on that screen saying some bad things against my boss. And it was really cool. I can't wait to see more of Maxwell Lord. He's such a cool character.
One of the things that has been mentioned about Marvel, I know this is DC, but one of the things that has been mentioned about Marvel is that it's a close-knit community, which is a bit like a found family. Would you say that there was that kind of atmosphere on set?
I've never been on a set that feels more like family than James's sets. You know, he knows everybody's names. Everybody is so free and open to talk. Everybody's so free and open to have conversations and contribute. Henry, who's the DP, is like just absolutely incredible, and the way that James and Henry are able to communicate is so fun for everybody to watch, and his camera team is incredible. When Nicholas Hoult walked on to set the first day, there are a lot of extras on that stage, and he went out of his way to introduce himself to every single person, and not just in a half-assed kind of way, in a very real, genuine way. And I think that that's from him as an actor and as a person, but that's also how that whole set sort of operates. Everybody is so kind. There is obviously hierarchy to make the set function, but in terms of people being valued, everyone's valued on that set. There's no hierarchy about people's value. Everybody matters, and that's, what a good, healthy, functioning family would feel like.
Now, this is David Colin Svett's first outing as Superman, and I thought there was certain, hints at other Superman that come before him, basically. I've got to ask you, and I think it's probably going to be David, who's your favourite Superman?
I mean, listen, I grew up on Christopher Reeves as Superman, so, he will always, to me, be, such a special and unique embodiment of Superman that will never get erased from my head, because that was my, childhood Superman. The Fortress of Solitude I saw for the first time, and that's when I knew I wanted to go visit Niagara Falls. So many things. Christopher Reeves is a pretty magical Superman. And I think David, wow, he just embodies that character in a way that is so genuine and so surprising. And to get to watch him work on set also, yes, he is an actor. He is definitely an actor, but he really carries a lot of that genuine quality in him as a person, and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to see him work as that character.
And I think it's fantastic that there's sort of nods to, obviously, areas of the comic books that you might not necessarily have jumped to immediately. I was shocked when I watched it to see Michael Rosenbaum was in it, a previous Lex Luthor, obviously. And then subsequently there's a cameo from Will Reeve, who's obviously Christopher Reeve's son. What a nice little addition. Yeah,
I mean, that comes from the person who James is. There's also a cameo from Lloyd Kaufman, who is the, the owner of Trauma Entertainment, and James did a film with Trauma Entertainment way back in the 90s. That's James right there. That's his stamp, caring about the details of different people. He does that in a lot of his movies. He has comic book creators hidden in the Suicide Squad. He cares about where things came from, and he has so much respect for other artists, and he does just such a beautiful job of incorporating them into his work and being grateful for them and inviting people who did the art and the color for the comic books that he drew from to create the story, to the premieres, and from his genuine heart, not just as some marketing ploy. He really cares about the art and where the art came from and the artists.
I've got to ask the question. Anyone who's listened to this podcast will know that I have some pretty interesting views on the multiverse. I mean, I can see why it's there, but I don't know. Do you feel it's overused a little bit now? Because, we've had Spider-Man, which was a massive success.
I mean, it's so interesting because I think the concept of multiverse has been in comic books, DC, Marvel, and other companies as well, for so long. It feels like it's so new because it started coming into movies, but it's lived in comic books for such a long time, and it's such a fun way to, make a character do something unexpected, or, throw different circumstances at a character and be able to do it immediately instead of having to wait 10 years of showing the change of this character throughout comic books. So I think it's been used in comic books for a long time. I think, it's been used as something really fun and not as a crutch. I think it could be seen as, oh, what a crutch. You just change everything. You change all the rules. None of the rules matter anymore because you're in a multiverse. But I do think what's so interesting now is that the current quantum physics landscape is discussing a lot of the things that comic books were discussing 50 years ago about, basically multiple universes. So it's kind of such a weird thing to sort of have this feeling of you're using this as a crutch to tell a story versus oh wait, this has always kind of existed in the comic book universe, versus wait, is current science trying to tell us that maybe the comic books were right all along? So I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts about it. We like seeing actors play in different worlds, and if there's something sort of related to that, it's sort of like watching your favorite actor go do a totally different movie. It's like watching your superhero go do a different movie, but it's a different world.
One question I know for a fact you probably know the answer to but can't answer at all. There's got to be a Superman 2, surely.
I don't know. I can answer that honestly. I don't know. I can tell you that it is very clear, and this isn't me spoiling anything or telling you anything that's not like just out there already, that James Gunn and Peter Safran are making an entire universe. You know, this is no longer movies live in silo. Creature Commandos is so incredible. The writing is so beautiful. The animation is incredible. And it is giving answers to questions from Peacemaker. Rick Flag Sr. is a part of Creature Commando, and we see Rick Flag Sr. in Superman. So you start to piece together the universe, and I don't know if there's going to be a Superman 2, but I know that it's very clear to me that these stories are going to be continued, and not just continued between like TV and film, which we have seen happen before, but between TV and film and animation and who knows what else. You know, I can just see that the whole world is filled with these characters that we're getting to know. And anytime you see a character pop up, I think it's worth noting that they might show up again because they live in a world, just like how comic books worked, you know? Like you would see a character say a line or two in a comic book or give a bubble, and like a couple years later they show up again and they're the one who has the like secret whatever in their back pocket the whole time, you know? So I have a feeling that that's sort of the direction we're going with DC when I look at it from, you know, just as an audience member.
The success obviously is Marvel and Disney doing it across the 3 different platforms, film, TV, animation, and that's worked so well. Makes sense really, didn't it, to go for same thing with DC, because one of the things I suppose with DC is you kind of have these TV series that have obviously been released in tandem, I suppose, with Marvel, almost doing the same thing in some respects. But then there was one I saw ages back where they got Tom Welling to sort of just jump in as a cameo, and I'm thinking, yeah, okay, can we have a bit more?
Yes, can we have a bit more? I mean, totally. That's totally right. Like, you would see things with Marvel, like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. would cross over with the movies that were coming out, and like the same things would be happening kind of simultaneously. And all that is really, really fun when you have a whole universe, you know, as long as each one can also stand alone and you can still enjoy them alone, you know. But I do think there's something a little more less like cameo oriented and more universe oriented about the approach as I'm seeing it. Again, this is like as I'm seeing it as an audience member. So I don't have a secret in on whether or not there will be a Superman 2, but I do know that we're going to keep seeing these same characters.
I've got to ask the question before we go on to your acting career. If you had a superpower, what would it be?
Oh man. I mean, I feel like all of us as individuals have probably answered this question so many different ways, and like I've got all my funny canned answers, but like I think right now I would want to be like like melatonin girl. When people would be like honking on the road and stuff, I would like ooze out melatonin and everybody would chill out for a minute. And when people would be fighting about things, I just like ooze out melatonin and everybody be like happy again. That's the superpower I would want today, which is very different from other superpowers I've ever said. But yeah, I'm gonna pick melatonin girl. Worst name ever. I gotta find a better name for that.
I thought you wanted to talk to your cat.
Obviously, I already do that though.
Yeah, but like the cat speak in English.
I don't know what you're talking about. We have full conversations. We're definitely speaking the same language.
Which can be done now, supposedly. I saw this on the news the other day. They've created an AI that can listen to your cat's meows and then tell you what it's saying.
I saw that too. You know, I always think, like, my cats know, like, when I say, I'm afraid to say it because they're going to come up to me. Like, if I say, are you hungry? Or if I say, do you want to go outside? You know, they know certain phrases and they respond to them. And I'm like, they learned English, yet when they meow, I, like, don't know what they're saying. So tell me, who's smarter?
That's a question for a different podcast. Yeah. So let's talk a bit about you, Natasha, you yourself. I am in awe of you, Natasha.
Oh, no. Thank you.
Obviously, I will be talking about your acting career, but I wanted to sort of talk about this first because I am going to mention another franchise that's got nothing to do with Marvel or DC, which is Star Trek. Now, you're going to go, I've never been on Star Trek, so why has this got any relevance to me? Which
I
is
love where we're going with this.
Star Trek 5, which was the one that William Shatner directed ages back in the 90s. And one of the scenes is at the start of the film where William Shatner, who's playing Captain Kirk, is climbing up El Capitan.
Yeah, of course.
And then falls to be captured by Mr. Spock. You've done it.
I have. Yeah, I have. I have climbed El Cap. Yeah, I love that you brought that up. I went to school at UC Davis, and I started climbing. I started rock climbing while I was there. I ended up working in Yosemite. I was a ranger for a while in Yosemite National Park. I would give people nature walks and campfire talks, and then I would go climbing on my days off or before work or after work. And I love Yosemite. It's such an important part of my life. I was in my early 20s when I was living there and working there, and climbing is a huge part of my life. I still go try to at least go climb some big stuff a couple times a year, even though it's a big difference from back in the day when I used to live out of my car and camp out on the side of the road and just wake up and climb till I couldn't climb anymore, and then go to sleep and then wake up and do it again. It's a huge part of how my brain functions and how my decision making works and how I calm myself. It's all related to climbing. But yeah, El Cap is something else, you guys. Wow. It's such a crazy thing to see now because I was really climbing in that area in the early 2000s, and now it's very common to, obviously I'm sure a lot of people have seen free solo and, people solo El Cap and people free solo El Cap, which are two different things. And, I was just with a climbing partner, and we would swing leads and take turns leading, and it took us a long time, and we slept on a portaledge, and yes, you have to figure out how to use the bathroom. There's a system for that. We can get into it if you want to, but maybe not everyone wants to hear it. And you cook your food up there, and you hope it doesn't rain, and you hope it doesn't get too hot, and it takes a real long time. It's crazy. It's like being in the ocean when you look across the granite of El Cap.
I hate heights.
I hear you, man.
Yeah. I freaked out when I went up the Eiffel Tower.
I freak out about heights too. I think part of climbing for me is staying calm in that scenario. If you put me on a Ferris wheel, almost inevitably I will scream at the top.
This may sound like a crazy question. I want the listener to kind of understand this question, because you've just said you'd freak out with a Ferris wheel, which is compartmentalised so you know what size there are in the bit you're in. Why are you more freaked out doing that than you are climbing?
I don't know the answer to that question. I guess there are lots of times I've been really scared climbing, and the fear isn't a bad thing. Fear keeps you alive. So if you're getting scared, sometimes it's for a good reason. Sometimes it's not. And that's just life, right? So that's where I say climbing affected a lot of the ways that I think about life. That is one of the lessons that I learned from climbing over and over again. Sometimes the fear is keeping you safe. Sometimes the fear is nonsense and it's just stuff you're making up. And you need to calm yourself and regulate, and then in a calm place, make the next move. For climbing, it's very obvious what the next move is. You have to actually physically move. And in life, it's probably pretty obvious too. Once you calm down enough, you have to make a choice and move forward. So it's scary. There are lots of things about it that are scary, and you have to really know your systems really well. Inherently there's a danger to it, and so you want to be really knowledgeable about your rope systems and how you're building your anchors and where you're placing your gear. And you're also usually climbing with a climbing partner. You want to keep them safe, and you are also trusting them to keep you safe. So there's a lot of communication that needs to happen to make sure there's safety. And then there's, of course, the fact that you have to be navigating your brain and your body. So you are checking in a lot with what you're thinking about, checking in with how your body feels, and constantly, like, sort of all these like little micro adjustments to where your hand is, where your foot is, but also where your thought process is. It's actually a super zen sport. I think people think of it as being like an adrenaline junkie thing, but like, it's so zen. You have to be so in the moment, and you have to be aware of where you just came from and where your last piece of gear was placed, where your rope is running and all these things. But you also have to be aware of what's next so that you know where you're going. But the only thing you actually have to be focused on in that moment is exactly that moment and where you are. So you kind of have this periphery of things, of the past and the future, but you have to be present. So it's like a really zen sport to do more than it is like about the adrenaline.
I kind of worry about Gen Z with this because there are so many TikTokers and YouTubers out there who are going up without harnesses and that kind of tech basically supporting them. I think we need to make it clear to people, Natasha, because this is a family-ish podcast, is if you're going to do it, A, get a qualified instructor to show you how to do it, and B, know what you're doing.
Yeah, totally. When I first started climbing, it wasn't as easy to access. There were some climbing gyms, but there weren't very many, so there wasn't a lot of indoor climbing. There were like books about climbing, but they weren't like really instructional books. They were more history or like magazines that were specifically about like climbing things that were happening. There wasn't a really big access to climbing, so you had to have a mentor basically to climb, and you would have to go like find that person, but you couldn't just pick up a book and go do it, and you couldn't just go to REI even at the time and get very much climbing gear. Now you, of course you can, you had to get gear from like specialized places. And so when I started climbing, there were people around me that were passing on knowledge that other people had passed on to them. And so it was very hands-on in terms of learning the ropes, literally. And now there's a lot more access to it, but that means that you have to be, it's great, it's wonderful. I love that people have access to climbing, but you have to be really cognizant of the fact that just because you read a book on how to build anchors doesn't mean you're building anchors the right way, and that somebody with knowledge about that should pass that knowledge to you. And that was always part of the cool thing about climbing, is that there was sort of this lineage, and finding a way to make that happen, whether you're paying a guide or paying an instructor or taking a class, or you find a mentor that you start climbing with, it doesn't matter how you do it, but finding good instruction to keep you safe, it's definitely important.
James is going to do one of those rescue scenes where Natasha's hanging off a
oh my gosh, I can't even tell you how much I would love that.
Would Lex Luthor do it like a day tour or something like that, where he's climbing with his own staff?
Yeah, I mean, he went to like the Fortress of Solitude. That's kind of like a wintry adventure. Maybe he needs like a summery adventure where he goes climbing.
We've started it now. That's fine. So the other thing I've got to mention is the radio show that you did, which you produced and hosted. Now, it was called Footprint Radio. Am I correct in assuming that you did it through ecological means?
Yes. So I kind of mentioned already that in my early 20s I worked in Yosemite. Environment and ecology has always been really important to me because it's the place I play in, and it's the place that brings me energy, is the world that is still filled with nature. When I finished doing that job, I went to Boulder, Colorado, partly because I could rock climb very easily there. There's lots of climbing that's very accessible. And also I started working in sustainable building consulting. So I had a degree in biology and a degree in theater. At the time, there weren't really a lot of degrees in like sustainability. Now there totally are, which is so awesome. So I kind of went in to working in architecture as like this biologist who kind of had some ideas on sustainability. And then I started doing, different sorts of like certifications, like the U.S. Green Building Council. I think a lot of people are familiar with LEED buildings, which have a certification and a standard to making buildings more sustainable for people and for the environment. And I knew all these like weird things about sustainability, and I knew all these cool, weird people who were doing such interesting things in that field. And I was like, I just want people to know about this. So I made a radio show that was like a half-hour radio show. It was actually on a radio station in Colorado, and also was a really early podcast. They were like really new, and you had to, I don't even remember how it worked, but yeah, I would interview these cool people I knew that did weird stuff like electrochromatic glazing or daylight modeling or like energy efficient like water systems or data centers, just like really weird nuanced stuff that was so cool and so advanced. And still, it's still the advanced stuff. Like we still aren't using it, and that show was like 20 years ago, you know. All that technology existed then, and we're still like learning how to implement it in buildings. And you know, humans use more energy in buildings than anything. We spend most of our lives inside buildings, either in our homes or in our offices. So that's where a bulk of our energy consumption, our water consumption, and our gas consumption is coming from. It's in buildings. So if buildings can be more efficient and speak to the environment, then that just changes everything with how much of an impact we have. You know, forget cars and planes, like, don't forget them, please, like, we should keep working on that. But the buildings are really where we lose so much sustainability.
Did the acting sort of come afterwards?
Like I said, I also have a degree in theater, so I always was acting, but I was doing it in places like Colorado, where I'd be doing plays on stage, because that's the kind of acting that, you know, you would be able to do in Colorado. And lots of like improv and stuff like that you can find in communities all over the United States and are so fun to be a part of. And then I came to Los Angeles, and when I would audition in Los Angeles, it would be something different. Instead of it being a play that would be put on for like a month in a smaller theater, like it would be in Boulder, Colorado, it would be, you know, like a short film or like a movie or something. So it just always kind of felt like the same thing. It was just very different. And, you know, in Colorado, you don't make a living as an actor doing plays. You do that on the, you know, in the evenings and on the weekends, and you invite your friends and your coworkers to come see it. It's not like I didn't understand that LA was a film and TV town. I just sort of saw it really similar until it started taking over more of my time, and it started paying more of my bills than it had previously. So I just sort of weirdly transitioned into film and TV from sort of this love for performing and sharing stories, and that's kind of how it happened. You know, it kind of didn't feel like a big shift or a big change. It just felt like I was doing the same thing. It just functioned way, way, way different in LA.
Obviously, you've been in a number of different projects. You mentioned you're also directing now as well. Which actors and actresses have been your favourites to work with, and why? I kind of have a feeling I know the answer. And who would you like to work with in the future?
Oh my gosh. Wow. Favorite people to work with? Oh my gosh, it's everyone? That sounds like, what a ridiculous answer. I mean, I love working with people that I know, either professionally because I've worked with them before, or because I sort of know them as people in my life. You know, I just worked on this film, so a lot of that is like in my head. It was just less than a month ago that we wrapped on this film called Faye Fever, and I worked with all people who I know and who are my friends and my collaborators, and people who are who I write with sometimes, and who I've done other films with as filmmakers or anthologies. And it's so fun to work with people you know, because you have this like idea of how to really make them shine. I mean, this is me speaking as a director, but also as an actor, because you're working with them. And when you can really see somebody like shine in a whole new way that they didn't even know they could as a performer, it's so exciting. I feel like I've totally digressed from your question, but it's because I just got so excited about thinking about all the people I just worked with. on this film in June, and it was spectacular. And it did include my husband, Sean. And I think, I saw performances from him that I haven't seen before. And it's so exciting. It's just like so exciting to see stories come out of people in new ways. I love that.
I think there should be more female directors in Marvel and DC.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm so with you. I think, we just don't even really totally understand how female-led projects, female-directed films, female-produced films, female-written films even function different, because as a woman who grew up with all my favorite filmmakers being men, because that's what I was seeing, it takes a lot for me to not think about a story the way I've already seen it been told over and over again. So I have a format in my head and a way of seeing the world through a camera that I've seen on all my favorite films for so many years that is from a male point of view. And I think there's a different female point of view that's equally as awesome and different, that even women are still discovering, and women and men working together are still discovering, and we don't know what it is. And I think we kind of lean on this sort of crutch of like, oh, women should tell women's stories, but like, I love that there's so many stories that are female stories that men directed that I love, and I don't think it's less of a story because it was directed by a man. The same way I think a female could probably direct a story, even the fact that I said probably is such like an ingrained patriarchal thing I just said. A female can direct a story about a man that is equally as cool as if a man directed it. So I think it's just about the fact that women and men have like sort of an inherently different perspective sometimes, and we don't even know exactly all about how to describe what that different perspective is in film and how it would even show up. I love hearing stories told by my male friends. I love hearing stories told by my female friends. So if I can start from there, like sitting around a dinner table having a fun time with men and women and hearing them tell stories, that dinner table can be the film industry as well, and we can enjoy all the stories from different points of view about everyone. It doesn't have to be so singular.
I do have to sort of press you a little bit, Natasha. Say, for example, Marvel or DC come to you and say, we want you to direct a film. Which superhero would you choose?
Who haven't we seen? I guess we've seen Poison Ivy, but like we really haven't seen her in a while, right? And she's like maybe kind of badass.
I mean, I think the last time was I want to say Batman and Robin.
I mean, I feel like there's something in there. I think there's something in there.
Part of this podcast has always been about issues that are affecting the industry. Obviously, we have to mention about the fact that there was a strike regarding the use of AI, particularly where actors are concerned. My question for you, Natasha, is what are your thoughts on AI?
Wow, I mean, I feel like maybe like a lot of people, my thoughts go a lot of different directions. Like, what is the function as a tool versus what is the function as maybe something else that we don't even really comprehend? I think that I see humans telling human stories forever. I get that there's a lot of things that people consider threatening to the entertainment industry, but honestly, the only thing that I really see as a major threat of AI to the entertainment industry is that investment money right now is going all towards AI, and investing in films isn't quite as hot as it used to be because there's this whole other industry that's just like making so much fast money right now. So that, honestly, we don't talk about very much, but it's probably the biggest threat of AI for the film industry. But I think, if we have another art form that can be used to create and tell stories, okay, like, I don't think that means that we're not going to still have humans telling human stories forever. So we just have to see what happens. I will always want to see stories that came from people having ideas. It's incredible how unique it is when you watch a certain director or a certain cinematographer or a certain performer and you kind of know these things about what you're going to get already before you watch it, or you see these things that has been a thread in their entire career because their career is their art. So I think that's something that's like so special that I would never want to miss out on because of AI. And I think a lot of other people probably really feel that in their heart too. There's just something magic about the art of people.
Well, Natasha, I'm going to give you a 1 minute plug, to plug Superman and obviously your film as well.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like plugging Superman seems like crazy because it's so incredible and it's so a part of our zeitgeist right now that probably you've seen it. But if you haven't, you should go see it. You should really, really check out the Lex Luthor team. They seem pretty awesome, and I think they really believe they're doing the right thing to help the world as best as possible. So I think they're all really good people, and I think you could see that on the screen when you see Lex and his team. But also, maybe you'll see that Superman's got some real good kindness in there too, and maybe he's a little better at figuring out the way to convey that. Also, Lois Lane, who we haven't even talked about yet. What an incredible character. What an incredible female character. What an incredible performance. Go see it.
Some of the lore and TV series and films and all that have worked up to it, to the fact that she knows it's Superman and Clark Kent are the same person. This is hypno glasses, if I remember correctly, which I thought was a brave move, for including
hilarious. That. It's a hilarious move.
I think the best part is the fact she already knows that he's, because that harkens back to like the Terry Hatcher, Dean Cain era.
Yes. I love it. I love it so much. I love that she sees him as a person and also as a superhero, but we watch her as just such an awesome human being who has her own life, her own personality that exists without Clark Kent and without Superman. You know, she's the one who's got the good career. She's the one who knows how to interview people. So just watching her shine as a character and as a performer is spectacular. I mean, it's so cool to see a female character in a Superman movie that isn't just there to look at Superman and see how great he is. She's looking at Superman and questioning him, and she's looking at Superman and seeing the humanity, and she's looking at Superman and Clark Kent and trusting him based on her knowledge of him, even getting new information that maybe seems a little suspect, you know? So she's really just such a cool human and a cool character to like aspire to, and that is really something special to see in a Superman movie and in any superhero movie that we've seen.
Now, Natasha, as a final note, I don't get to ask this question enough, and one of the things I've gotten away with so far is this question. Now, we've done it with Nicolas Cage's brother. We've done it with Lawrence Fishburne's son. I get around. And we're now going to try it with you, Natasha. And I apologise profusely with this, but you kind of know what I'm probably going to ask.
Are you going to ask me for an impersonation?
No, worse than that. Okay, so you ready, Natasha? I'm so sorry. What is, and it doesn't have to be the same, what is your favourite Sean Gunn and James Gunn movie?
Oh my gosh. I mean, you can just put a list of like movies that fall into the same category that they've done together, right? I love watching what my husband Sean did in Guardians of the Galaxy 3. It's pretty interesting. I mean, I love what he gets to do with his character Kraglin, but I also got to see some cuts of that film before the VFX went on, and it is really special to be able to see Sean's performance as Rocket, because it's real, you know, and what you see in the animation, that work isn't motion capture, it's motion reference. So that animation and that drawing is happening off of Sean's performances in a different way than just with the dots. It's not just the movement of his face. Somebody's actually capturing the performance like in a different way as an artist. And it's really cool to see that aspect of that character brought to life that nobody else really gets to see. Maybe it shows up sometimes in some of the behind the scenes, but you know, I got to see full scenes before any of that went on. And it's really cool to see any performer, but especially somebody who you know so closely, really transform and really be a different character and do it with such love and compassion for that character and for the characters around them. And nobody else really gets to see that. You can see it in Rocket when you watch Rocket perform, and you can even hear it in the voice because he plays the younger voice of Rocket in that film too. But it's something really special to see, and that I know I'm just saying something that is hard for anybody else to go see it, but I think you can see it when you watch Guardians 3. And then it's also cool over all the Guardians movies to watch Sean literally talk to himself. And that's a hell of a thing to do as a performer, to play both sides of something, to be Kraglin and to be Rocket. And of course, you know, all those movies, as James created them, I think are like, what a beautiful trilogy. And all the characters are so fully formed, and the female characters are beautiful and making you know, beautiful choices. And you know, I really love it. I love it.
I was surprised you didn't go for something Troma-based, because there is an interesting fact here. I do have a link here in the fact I've actually met Lloyd Kaufman.
I love it. Yes, Sean and I are in Troma films 20 years apart from one another. Sean is in Romeo and Juliet. I am in a film called BC Butcher that was made way later. I'm sure both of them were made equally as scrappy and as silly and goofy and weird as any Troma film has ever made. When we first met, it was definitely a realization like, oh wait, we both know Lloyd. Oh wait, we both know Lloyd because we were both in Troma films all these years apart. So yeah, I am a Troma girl, deep in there. You can't ever take that away.
Have they remade Toxic Avenger, I've heard?
Yes, yeah. I was just at Comic-Con this past weekend. I was there for a panel on independent female filmmakers. And while we were there, the new Toxic Avenger was announced. The trailer was released. You can find it online now. Peter Dinklage stars as Toxie. And Lloyd was up there in Hall H on the panel, and I saw Lloyd later in the day, still back at the Troma booth, just like he's always been for many, many, many years. Also, last night, a film premiered in Fantasia Film Festival called Occupy Can, and that is a female director, and it's a documentary about Lloyd's history of occupying Cannes, and her name is Lily Hayes Salberg. Lloyd Kaufman has this long history with Troma of being this sort of renegade filmmaker, and now there's a mainstream Toxic Avenger film, and that movie he made so many years ago, and there was a cartoon that was out for a while, and it's also a film about ecology. I mean, it's got a lot of weird other stuff going on, but ultimately it's a film about protecting the planet, and like, you know, toxins are bad. So I'm a huge fan of that message, as well, as you know, from my history working in sustainable building and living in Yosemite and all that.
Got to ask the question then, Natasha. Would you direct a film? Would you go back?
To Troma?
Yeah.
Listen. I love Troma. I love the fun things they're doing. I love Lloyd, and I love independent film. Sure, why not? Why would I ever say no to that?
I mean, it'd be weird if they somehow did a Marvel DC film in the style of a Troma film, if that makes sense.
Style of a Troma film?
Yeah.
It would be revolutionary, let's just call it that.
Well, Natasha, it's been a pleasure interviewing you.
Likewise, it's been so lovely. Thank you so much.
Obviously, we'll have to get you back.
Yeah, I'd love that. Matt, you're like great. Your questions are so cool, and I so appreciate you creating this fun space to talk in.
Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks. I'll talk to you later.
Bye bye now.
Bye, Matt.